The Major Arcana. 1. The Juggler, or Magician. Before a table, covered with the appliances of his art, stands the figure of a juggler, one hand upraised, holding a wand, in some packs a cup, the other pointing downwards. He wears a cap of maintenance, like that of the kings, whose wide brim forms a sort of aureola around his head. His body and arms form the shape of the Hebrew letter Aleph, to which this card corresponds. Nowadays, it's usually bait. He symbolizes will. Two, the High Priestess, or female pope, a woman crowned with a high mitre, or tiara, her head encircled by a veil, a stole, or solar cross, upon her breast, and the book of science open in her hand. She represents science, wisdom, or knowledge. And in the Islamic tradition, one would say Quran, Hadith, and Tafsir. 3. Empress. A winged and crowned woman, seated upon a throne, having in one hand a scepter bearing a globe, surmounted by a cross, while she rests the other upon a shield, with an eagle blazoned therein, on whose breast is the cross. She is the symbol of action, the result of the union of science and will. 4. The Emperor. He is crowned and leaning against a throne. His legs form a cross, and beside him, beneath his left hand, is a shield blazoned with an eagle. In his right hand he bears a scepter similar to that of the Empress. His body and arms form a triangle, of which his head is the apex, so that the whole figure represents a triangle above a cross. He represents realization. Well, in other words, he's sulfur. 5. The Hierophant, or Pope. He is crowned with the papal tiara and seated between the two pillars of Hermes and of Solomon. With his right hand he makes the sign of esotericism, and with his left he leans upon a staff, surmounted by a triple cross. Before him kneel two ministers. He is the symbol of mercy and beneficence. 6. The Lovers. It's also called the Brothers. This is usually described as representing a man between vice and virtue, while a winged genius threatens vice, which with it start. But I am rather inclined to the opinion that it represents the Kabbalistical microprosopus between Bina and Malkuth. You know, because that's like Cupid right there, right? See MacGregor Mathers, Kabbalah Unveiled. While the figure above shows the influence descending from Kether, it is usually considered to mean proof or trial, but I am inclined to suggest wise disposition as its signification. 7. The Chariot. This is a most complicated and important symbol, which has been restored by Eliphas Levi It represents a conqueror crowned and bearing a scepter, riding in a cubical chariot, surmounted by 4 columns and a canopy, and drawn by 2 horses, one of which looks straight forward, while the other turns his head towards him. 2 wheels are shown in the complete, single-headed figure. It represents triumph and victory of justice and judgment. 8. Justice. A woman, crowned and seated on a throne between 2 columns, holding in her right hand an upright sword, and in her left the scales. She symbolizes equilibrium and justice. 9. The Hermit. An old and bearded man, wrapped in a mantle, and with his head covered with a cowl, bearing in his right hand the lantern of occult science, while in his left he holds his magic wand half hidden beneath his cloak. He is Prudence. 10. The Wheel of Fortune. A wheel of 7 spokes. The 2 halves of the double-headed cards make it 8 spokes, which is incorrect, revolving between 2 uprights. Well, you can use it to symbolize the seasons, right? The cross quarters and the equinoxes and solstices in between. On the ascending side is an animal ascending, and on the descending side is a sort of monkey descending. So, animal ascending and a monkey descending. Both forms are bound to the wheel. So is the donkey ascending and the monkey descending? Above it is the form of an angel, or sphinx in some, holding a sword in one hand and a crown in the other. This very complicated symbol is much disfigured and has been well restored by Levi. It symbolizes fortune, good or bad. 11. Strength are fortitude, a woman crowned with a crown, and a cap of maintenance, who, calmly and without effort, closes the jaws of a furious lion. She represents strength. 12. The Hanged Man. This extraordinary symbol is almost unintelligible in the double-headed cards. Properly, it represents a man, hung head downwards from a sort of gibbet. By 1 foot, his hands are bound behind his back in such a manner that his body forms a triangle with the point downwards, and his legs across above it. 2 sacks or weights are attached to his armpits. He symbolizes sacrifice. 13. Death. A skeleton armed with a scythe, wherewith he mows down heads in a meadow like grass. He signifies transformation or change. Now, the different heads could very well indicate the steps of the process, or the false egos, or whatever of the, 14. Temperance. An angel with the sign of the sun on her brow, pouring liquid from one vessel into another. She represents combination. 15. The Devil. A horned and winged demon with eagle's claws, standing on an altar, to which 2 smaller devils are bound by a collar and a cord. In his left hand he bears a flame-headed scepter. He is the image of fate, or fatality, good or evil. Now, bestial forms of this idea of a queen of heaven and stuff like this, rather than actually being androgynous, because the androgyne is not really the Baphomet figure, technically. Of course, nowadays we think of that, but Baphomet originates as a female entity, but that's where a lot of our ideas of the devil come from, is the wild beast female entities that people used to worship. 16. The Lightningstruck Tower. A tower whose upper part is like a crown struck by a lightning flash. 2 men fall headlong from it, one of whom is in such an attitude as to form a Hebrew letter, Ayin. Sparks and debris are falling. It shows ruin, destruction. 17. The star. A nude female figure pours water upon the earth from 2 vases. In the heavens above her shines the blazing star of the Magi, surrounded by 7 others. Trees and plants grow beneath her magic influence. On one, the butterfly of psychic alights. She is the star of hope. 18. The moon. The moon shining in the heavens, drops of dew falling, a wolf and a dog howling at the moon, and halted at the foot of 2 towers, a path which loses itself in the horizon and is sprinkled with drops of blood, a crayfish, emblematic of the sign Cancer. So crayfish, crabs, lobster, any crustacean you can use. But probably save the crabs for the Chariot card, right? Ruled over by the moon, crawls through water in the foreground toward the land. It symbolizes twilight, deception, and error. Well, actually, you can say the crayfish is one of those Pisces animals, too. So the lobster and the crab you can put on other cards, but the crayfish actually is attributed to Pisces, is why it's associated there. The sun. The sun sending down its rays upon 2 children who suggest the sign Gemini. Behind them is a low wall. It signifies earthly happiness. 20. Where's 20? The judgment. The last judgment. An angel in the heavens blowing a trumpet, to which a standard with a cross thereon is attached. The dead rise from their tombs. It signifies renewal, result. 0. The foolish man. A man with a fool's cap, dressed like a jester, with a stick and bundle over his shoulder. Before him is the butterfly of pleasure, luring him on, while in some packs a tiger, in others a dog, attacks him from behind. It signifies folly, expiation. Now, it's a lot less obvious as we progress. You know, if we start at 0, which makes more sense when you have that as Aleph instead of the Sheen card, but, you know, and Judgment as the Sheen card. But it becomes less obvious. But then it becomes more obvious that each card kind of represents the whole thing. Because, you know, you have a little marks. It's, oh, there's 22 of those, and there's 22 of those. And particularly the you know, the world card and the full card and the magician card. They all let you know that, you know, you're talking about everything. You're talking about the whole deck. But 21 is the universe. Within a flowery wreath, is a female figure, nude, save for a light scarf. So it's a sari. Is that a hint at the whole Hindu thing, right? She represents nature and the divine presence therein. In each hand she should bear a wand. At the 4 angles of the card are the 4 cherubic animals of the apocalypse. Above, the eagle and the man. Below, the lion and the bull. Represents completion and reward. And so the air and water signs, air and water, fire and earth, in today's look at it. But let's remember apocalypse. Apocalypse does not mean end times. It means an unveiling. And that's sort of what you should be doing with tarot, if you're going to use tarot. Is not, I can tell the future because I can shuffle the cards better than you. It's like, no. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to figure out the spiritual, working out the themes in your own life. That's what the cards do. Well, I mean, that's what you do through the cards.